Hello, everybody. This is Zach back here with another episode of Clutch Crew Sports Podcast. Today I'm joined by Eric and Connor, my other cousin. We're going to be talking about today um, how Game 2 went. All of us watched Game 2, so we're going to give a reaction video to that, as well as making our predictions for Game 3. And then also we're going to show our DraftKings lineups, how well they did in Game 2, as well as our new lineups for Game 3. But before that, I'll let Connor introduce himself to the show. This is his first episode. So welcome to
Y-
the show, man.
Yeah, hey guys. I'm Connor. As Zach said, I'm these guys' cousins. I'm the middle cousin in this group. I follow just about every sport there is out there to some extent. Everything from the big four sports to following the French Open right now and tennis that's going on right now. So I follow everything just a little bit. Know the NBA Finals is going on right now, even though most of my sports watching around this time of year is hockey, but these guys don't really watch hockey. But I'm ready to talk about the NBA Finals. I followed the NBA a little bit and excited to do this.
Awesome. All right. So looking back at Game 2, the Warriors won 109 to 104. And really, to me, that 18 to nothing run at the start of the third quarter was signaling pretty much the end of the game. I've seen the Warriors do this so many times uh, in the Portland series when Portland would have 17-point leads, and then you go like make popcorn or something, and then come back and you're like, whoa, the game's tied. How did it get to this? So the Warriors had a classic third quarter for them. I thought that the first half of the game, Toronto was dominating it, but they weren't dominating it on the scoreboard because um, they sent Golden State to the line too many times. Kyle Lowry in the first half played terrible defensively and offensively. Like, I'm gonna go off on Kyle Lowry here for a second, just because of the stupid fouls that he caused in the game. Uh, there were so many times where Golden State was in the bonus and Kyle Lowry would get too aggressive and try and go for a steal or something, and just have a senseless foul after a rebound, like poking into DeMarcus Cousins. And to me, that was in the first half what allowed the Warriors to get so many free throws and make the score closer than it really was. So I'm putting, most of the blame on Kyle Lowry for this loss. I'd be interesting to hear what you guys think was the blame for the Raptors loss, though.
Yeah, sure, man. I'm gonna agree with what you said, but I'm also gonna add on to that a little bit. Kyle Lowry was definitely a problem, but I'm putting this as just more of a team loss in general because in addition to Lowry, Siakam and Gasol also struggled. Siakam basically disappeared in this game from what I saw. In the first game, he was so dominant, making so many shots. I think he made like 11 shots in a row or something like that. But he was bad offensively in this game and just disappeared. And yeah, so you got the stats on the screen there.
Yep,
5 for
yep.
18. I'm pretty sure his only points besides the 2 free throws were dunks or layups. Like I
Mm-hmm.
don't think he made a jump shot the whole game. And to me, what really hurt Toronto the most, I mean, obviously the 18-0 run, as you mentioned, was a huge dagger. But if you look back on it, Toronto missed so many wide open shots in the first half of this game. I mean, they were winning at halftime, but Golden State went on a little run right before halftime, which got
Mm-hmm.
them back to within a much closer margin. And you could just feel that the momentum of the game was shifting. I did not expect the 18-0 run to start the third quarter, but I I guess I can't say I'm too surprised though with the way Toronto was playing. They were hesitant. I don't know, they weren't making their shots, and then you could tell that like rattled their confidence. So then they were, instead of taking the shots, they were passing it to someone else, like looking for another option. I just don't know what happened, man, because they were so dominant feeling in the first game. I know in the last episode we did, Zach, like you had mentioned it, where in game one, it just felt like even when the Warriors were trying to make a run, that it wasn't going to matter and Toronto was still going to win the game. But with this game, it was different. When Golden State went on their run to close out the first half, I just had a feeling that the second half was going to be different this time than it was in the first game. And my gut feeling ended up being right. But despite all that, they still even had a chance to win the game, but they couldn't get it done. So it's going to be interesting to see how this plays forward going into game 3 with Golden State being at home now. But I don't necessarily think Toronto's out of it just yet, but they really needed to win that game. It was right there for the taking, and they couldn't get it. So that was my analysis of the game. And Connor, I'll look forward to hearing what you had to add to that and what your thoughts were on it.
Yeah, I mean, I think the analysis, I mean, I am also with Zach that, Kyle Lowry was part of the problem, but I think Eric had the good point that it was really a team loss for Toronto, because that, they were missing all those shots in the first half, but really, when it got down to it, like you were saying, they had a chance to win the game. And I remember watching that fourth quarter, and it was really interesting seeing that early on in the fourth quarter, Golden State they were passing the ball really well. They were finding open guys, they were getting open shots, and they were knocking them down. And they were trying to put Toronto away. I think they got up to like a 12-point lead at some point. And I think Zach and I were talking when the game was going on, and Zach said, "It's over. Toronto's not coming back from this." And I said, "Well, they could still have a chance." And basically, Toronto, they started playing really good defense after all the Golden State passing around. They figured out how to play defense against them. And I think there was something like Golden State went like 4 minutes without a basket in the fourth quarter. They were just defense. But on the other end of that, Toronto would get down to the other end, and just like in the first half, they were getting these open shots, and nobody could hit them. Like Kawhi had a couple open threes that he missed. I know even Van Vliet, he played a good game, but he missed an open three. Siakam was missing shots, and they really had a chance there at the end to get back in the game and make it a winnable game if they could have, with the defense they were playing, if they could have just knocked down those shots. And I mean, I think it was just another case of, like you said, the 18-0 run. I mean, you can't play from behind against Golden State. We've seen this in the past. If you get behind against Golden State, especially late in the game, it's really difficult to come back. And Andre Iguodala there at the end making that clutch shot. We were also talking about and there on that last possession that Golden State had when Toronto was only down by 3, or no, they were down by 2. It was 106 to 104, and I think there was like 30 some seconds left, I think. And the announcers were mentioning, like, they don't want to let the shot clock run down. They don't want to let Golden State use the whole shot clock. And so, they held off on fouling at first because Steph Curry had the ball. And, obviously you don't want to foul Steph Curry because he's pretty much automatic from the free throw line. But then it got to a point where they had passed it over to Draymond, and they also made a pass to, I think it was Livingston they passed to. And Toronto had plenty of time that I don't know why they didn't foul in that scenario, because they didn't foul, and they eventually got the ball back to Steph, who, got the Iguodala, and Iguodala made the shot. And which, if they had just fouled in that scenario, I don't know why they didn't foul Draymond to try and give themselves a better chance. So I think it was just a lot of missed opportunities for Toronto, unfortunately for them. We'll have to see. I'm also with Eric that they needed to win this game because now
Mhm.
they're going to have to, if they want to win the series, they have to win a game in Oakland, which is obviously easier said than done. Um, because especially a lot of people always talk about with like teams that haven't been in the playoffs for a long time have a really big home court advantage, like Toronto. They been waiting for this moment for a really long time, and the crowd was loud. They were into the game, and that can give you a big advantage. Kind of like going over to the NHL for a second with the Carolina Hurricanes. I don't know if they would have had the success they had if it wasn't for their home crowd because they didn't play great on the road. But when they came home, the crowd was like the loudest arena in hockey over the course of
Mhm.
their homestand. So a lot of people would think, maybe Golden State doesn't have that advantage with the home court, but you got to remember that this is Golden State's last year in Oakland.
Yeah. Yep.
So
Yep.
the crowd wants to see them win one more time before they leave, and it's just going to be difficult for Toronto to win a game in Oakland, I think. Um,
Yeah, I definitely agree with a lot of what you said there, Connor. And then going back on that last possession, which you were detailing out, my personal opinion on why they didn't foul Draymond, because apparently the coach, Nick Nurse, has said in a press conference after the game that he told them to foul anyone other than Steph because Clay was obviously out, so Steph was the premier free throw shooter on that team, on that lineup. Everybody else probably shoots free throws from the 70 to 80%, which you'll live with, but you need time to get the ball back and score. But when you watch the video of the game of the person who's by Draymond, in that instance, it's Danny Green, and Danny Green had just made that 3-point shot to cut the lead to two. So I think he was still feeling a little bit of like, I just made that shot, like sort of feeling, and he kind of lost track of what his coach had said in that timeout before, where you're supposed to foul Draymond, if some, and I just think he had kind of a mental lapse there, not necessarily as big of a lapse as J.R. Smith did in last year's game one, where that was
That was
became
the
like a
worst.
meme, because there could be an argument like, oh, don't foul. I wouldn't support that argument, but uh, it's not as bad as the J.R. Smith one, but still, I feel like he was kind of, still in that mindset of, oh, I just made that three, you know,
yeah.
and he
Hmm.
wasn't thinking fully straight on that instance. But
Yeah.
um, to I forgot to mention this earlier. Another reason why, after the game, when I was thinking so much about how, Kyle Lowry's the most to blame for this loss is because I looked up, just now his contract, and he's getting paid 31 million, which I don't have the contract numbers for the whole team, but that's got to be the second most behind Kawhi, or even potentially more than Kawhi. So that's
Mm,
disappointing. Your best player, or potentially second to, you know, best player financially wise, is fouling out in games, only playing 28 minutes, 13 points, but his effort and his, you know, decision making, I think, really costs them. He should be playing better because, he's a multiple time All Star, and, he's been in the playoffs many times before. It's not like this is it's their first trip to the finals, but, they've gone up and they've lost to LeBron pretty much every year.
well,
But
going back to the contract, like what you were saying, Kawhi that is larger than Kawhi's contract because Kawhi's contract's about 10 million less than that.
Okay, yeah. So he's the highest paid player on their team, uh, which to me is inexcusable. Steph Curry is the highest paid player in Golden State, and if he had a game like Kyle Lowry, we'd be going off on him. Obviously, Steph is held to a higher standard than Kyle Lowry, but you know, going back to kind of what Eric said, where he felt that tide turn from the second to third, I thought that change was because of Steph. Steph in that first quarter, I don't think he scored any points, maybe like a free throw, but he just was not himself. The reporters were saying that he was sick, dehydrated or something, and he really kind of came alive in that second and third quarter and propelled them. Um, I think DeMarcus Cousins had a big impact. From only playing 8 minutes in game one to 28, getting 11 points, some crucial rebounds. I actually wrote down, I was writing down notes, and I wrote down in one instance where DeMarcus Cousins played terrible defense on a play where he just kind of let somebody by him. But then towards, as the game went on, he gradually got better at defense, uh, and was much more contributive on the defensive end as well as the offensive end. Um, Let me look at some other notes I've got here. Yeah, so on that final possession with Iguodala, that was, I think we could be having a whole different story if on that Steph Curry pass to Livingston, if Kawhi intercepts that, and man, that was close. That was a close. Livingston got there just before Kawhi got there, and if Kawhi had gotten that, that would have been a free lane for a dunk, and it'd be a tie game. Would have gone to overtime, and I think Toronto would have won that without Clay. I think the Warriors, psyche would have been damaged. I think that Toronto was playing great defense there in that last 5 minutes. They kind of switched their defensive style to Van Vliet was on Steph and he was harassing Steph. Van Vliet played great, by the way, but Van Vliet was harassing Steph, and then everybody else was kind of playing the zone defense, and that was really shutting down Golden State's offense in that last 5 minutes. So it'll be interesting, I think, to see if they continue that style of defense in Game 3 in crucial moments where Steph might be the only player on the court. If Clay's not in there, that really scares you offensively.
I mean, I think going back to what you were talking about, going to if that had happened and if Kawhi had intercepted that pass and gone to overtime, I think you were right that I think Toronto would have won if they had managed to go to overtime, because you said Clay, Clay went to the locker room. He was down and out. And I think the other key for if the game had gone to overtime was DeMarcus Cousins was really tired. Like, I know the announcers were talking about it too at the end of the game. DeMarcus Cousins was laboring. He was really tired. He needed to get out of the game. And even though he made such a big difference for them, I think it would have led to Toronto winning in overtime had they gotten there. But I mean, along with DeMarcus Cousins, I think another big key for Golden State in that game was Draymond. Because in the first game, I don't remember exactly what the stats were in the first game, but Draymond had a pretty awful first game one.
Yeah, he was like 2 for 9, I think, in the first game, which is bad.
And also defensively, look at Siakam's. He's the primary guy on Siakam, and Siakam had a great game one and a terrible game two, so he definitely improved on that end. So,
agreed. I noticed with Draymond's defense in this game compared to how he guarded Siakam in the first game. In the first game, I noticed Draymond was more lax and kind of backing off on Siakam, I guess kind of daring him to shoot. But then that gave Siakam the space that he needed to be able to like make moves and like run by him and get easy scores. And then of course he was clicking on those jump shots. So if he took the jump shots, he was making them. But I noticed in game 2 that Draymond was playing more physical and more smothering approach on him and not giving him the space. And I think that was what affected Siakam so much, and what was making him not play well compared to how he did in the first game. But I think ultimately, man, it just like you guys have mentioned how in the first half, like DeMarcus Cousins in the first half, I remember was like 0 for 3 with 3 fouls or something like that. I mean, in the first half, he was not good. And Steph Curry didn't make a field goal until just a few minutes left in the first half. The Raptors, while they did get up at 12 by 1 point, that lead could have been so much bigger.
Yeah.
I mean, they could have got up by 30 at one point with as bad as Golden State was playing. And it's not every day that the Golden State Warriors are going to have lapses like that where they're not making shots. Because, I mean, other than Klay Thompson, no one was doing anything for Golden State. I mean, I think he got their first, 13 points or 11 points or something like that. And the fact that Toronto could not take advantage of that hurt them so badly. And because even if they got up by 25-30, even with Golden State, if they did go on a 18-0 run in that situation, Toronto could have still had the lead at that point, as opposed to then being down by double digits. So that to me was the biggest difference. And Toronto's just going to have to be better. I mean, if they want to steal one of these games in Oakland. So
yeah. So like you said, looking forward on this next, this games 3 and 4, we'll talk mostly just game 3 coming up. But I think that if Klay was fully healthy, if Looney was healthy, the same, starting lineup that Golden State had in game 2 and same health, that I think we all would take them to win on their home court with carrying over the momentum from this game. But with Klay's questionability and Looney's probably out for the rest of the series now, I'm curious to hear who you guys think will win game 3, because it's a lot more complicated now with Klay Thompson being out. And if Steph, is the only guy there and Iguodala's gotten hurt every game, the Golden State Warriors are really going to need that strength in numbers in this game. So who do you guys have winning game 3?
Oh, just one quick question before we go into that. I haven't checked lately right before we got on. I meant to do this and I forgot, but has there been any update on Kevin Durant's availability, or is he ruled out, or do we know?
I'll take a look at that.
I don't think he's ruled out, but I think it's highly unlikely.
Yeah, you guys keep talking. I'll take a look.
Yeah, I think it's going to be game 4 at the earliest on Durant, so I wouldn't plan for him being in there.
That's interesting, because that's what they've said every game.
Exactly, man.
With game one, they were like, well, we're looking at game 2 at the earliest, and then before game 2, they're like, well, now we're looking at the first home game in Oakland as the earliest. And I swear, dude,
they were talking about that in the Houston series. They were saying, oh, if he might need to come back for game 7, and all throughout that Portland series, I mean, every game they were like, okay, Kevin Durant's going to miss this next game, then he'll be, potentially be back for this game. And they say if it's really just a calf strain, it's a pretty bad calf strain I saw earlier, he's almost been out a month now.
I mean, you're not out that long for a calf strain.
Yeah.
But it looks like what it's
Especially
saying
not for the playoffs.
Right, yeah, the playoffs, you want to come back. I mean, Steve Kerr is kind of, he's skating around it. He said, this is the comment that he made, is that he said he thinks Durant only needs one practice. He said if Durant is cleared for one practice between games 2 and 3, he thinks that's all he needs. And he could return game 3 or game 4. But, at this point, you gotta everything with a grain of salt, because that's what, like you said, that's what they've been saying, that he's probably coming back and he'll be back for this game. Oh, he might be back for this game, but at this point, who really knows?
Yeah, so I think the bigger question mark, though, and the one that's more could go either way, is Klay Thompson, because I believe it was a strained hamstring injury he suffered.
That's what they're saying. Yeah.
Yeah, and because I told Eric this when the game was going live. When he got hurt, I was like, wait, how did he get hurt? Because I saw a few plays before that where it looked like, oh man, he might have gotten hurt on that play. And then, when he was walking up and he was obviously in pain, he was like trying to say like foul just so that he could get off the court. But I guess the refs kept the game going, and then Ibaka, I think, made a 3-pointer while that was going on because obviously it was a 5-on-4 game. You should be able to score a basket with 5-on-4. But it looked to me like he got hurt, a few series before that, and that gives me a little bit more of a confidence that he'll play because if it was really so bad, he would have been out immediately. So it kind of came back to him. It's hamstring injuries. Leonard Fournette last year was like, what is he going to be back or not? Like people, it's so hard to predict that. But I do have a little bit of confidence in him coming back, and I also think that he's one of those guys that he's never missed a playoff game in his career, so he's very motivated to play. Whereas I think someone like Durant, who's got that big free agency coming up, and also if Golden State loses, he can be like, they need me because they lost without me. Whereas Clay's been here since the beginning. He's a splash brother. He's just as much as the Warriors as Steph is. So he's motivated to play. He wants to play. I think more so than Durant would want to play. But he's this injury just happened on Sunday, and the game's on Wednesday. Was it Saturday or Sunday? The game.
Game was on Sunday.
Sunday. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so it's a 2 days in between period. So if he plays, if he doesn't plays, that could swing the balance in your predictions. No, I'm gonna go in with assuming Durant's not playing.
Yeah, I would assume that he's not.
Yeah. So it's tough because Golden State on their home court, their home court this year hasn't been as big of an advantage like Connor was talking about earlier. But at this stage, you got to think that it's going to be an advantage, obviously. So I've got Golden State winning this game. I'm going to say Steph has a even better game than game one. I say he goes for 40 because he's going to be playing the entire game pretty much. I think Draymond will at least get you a double-double, flirt with a triple-double. It might not be the biggest triple-double or double-double, but he'll come up in key moments. Iguodala has been here many times before. I think he made that shot with 5 seconds left, so he's got to be feeling really confident, whereas I think Toronto has a lot of question marks right now with their confidence levels.
I got you, man. With the Klay Thompson injury thing, though, obviously I'm no doctor. I don't know anything for sure. This is all speculation, what I'm about to say here, but I want to disagree a little bit with that in terms of what you said. What I worry about is, because I know what you mentioned was good about him being able to play through it for a while before he ultimately had to go out.
Mm-hmm.
But what I kind of wonder is what if he somehow made it worse by staying in the game? I'm almost wondering if when he first felt the pain, if maybe he should have gone out and tried to get checked up on a little bit and then maybe try to test it and then see if he could go, and then instead of just pushing through it, because sometimes you can make an injury worse by doing that. Now, obviously, I don't know for sure, but just what concerned me was when I was, looking up his status for the game, when right after the game, he said there was no doubt that he was going to, that he was for sure going to play. But then the next day a report came out, well, they have to test it and he's got to go through all this. That's concerning for me. So
yeah, right.
I don't know.
You see that in the NFL a lot too, where guys, they'll just kind of have a minor injury in the game and, but they'll still be able to go because at that point you're just going off of adrenaline. But then you come back later when you actually go to the doctor and they go, well, yeah, that's actually a lot worse than you thought it was.
Yeah, I that concerns me with that. I remember, of course, as Jack's fan, Zach, I remember you probably remember that game where Paul Posluszny the play looked really bad, and basically like his shoulder got like ripped out of his socket, and somehow he finished the game. I don't know how, man. I would have been like, yeah, no, forget this, I'm out. But he kept playing. But then, of course, then the report came out after the game that he had to have surgery and was out for the year. Now with Klay Thompson, I know his injury's not that level of severity, but I don't know, just the fact that he said at first he didn't think he was going to miss the game, and then now there's all these question marks. Like, that concerns me to where even if he does play, is he going to be 100%? And like, I know we haven't got to the DraftKings lineups yet, but I had him in my lineup when I first read that report. But then after that second report, I lost confidence and said I've got to get him out of my lineup and make changes, which I did. So I don't know. I'm going to pick Toronto to win the game. Now, there's another reason for this. Another sports site that I listen to, like, mentioned this, which I found to be really interesting. But apparently, when Kawhi Leonard was with the Spurs, he played better when playing games in Oracle than he did on his home court, which was really interesting because usually 99.9% of players play better when they're on their home court than on an away court. But for whatever reason, he goes off in Oracle, and I don't, who knows, he's on a different team now, so who knows if, he will here. But with Golden State just so banged up, I don't feel like Toronto is going to shoot that badly 2 games in a row. I mean, they're shooting, it's like, I don't know if you can scroll down to Toronto stats on the screen, like to see what their total field goal percentage was, but
I think 37%.
37%.
And then 28.9% so 30% from 3.
Yeah, but I mean, look at all these, guys on here. You got a 2 of 7, 4 of 11, 5 of 18. I mean, I just don't see them being that bad. I mean, that was just an awful shooting night for them, and they still had a chance to win the game. So I am going to pick Toronto in the upset. They know it's a must-win game. They're feeling the pressure now after blowing this last game. To me, this is an all or nothing game. I mean, to me, this game is going to be the one that decides the series. I think whoever wins this game wins the series. So, and I'm rooting for Toronto to win the series, but obviously that's not just why I'm picking them. I feel like they can steal this game with all of the injuries and question marks that Golden State has. So that's my thought. I won't give a score prediction just yet. And if I am wrong, I'm just going to blame it on that, Golden State wasn't as injured as we thought. And I'm just going to blame it on that. Like, if Klay Thompson plays and goes off for 50 points, be like, well, I didn't think he was going to play, so otherwise I would. So Connor, what's your... Yeah. Connor, then I'll really be regretting not drafting him in my lineup. But yeah, so Connor, what's your thoughts going into game 3?
Yeah, no, I mean, it's difficult. I mean, I think kind of like what Zach said, if Klay was for sure going to play and he was healthy, then no question I'd be picking the Warriors in this game. They're coming back to their home court, and they are the Golden State Warriors after all, so it's a hard team to pick against. I'm actually kind of on the fence. I am not sure who I want to pick because I hadn't actually heard about that second Klay Thompson report until we were talking about this earlier. Before we started this, I hadn't actually heard that. So I thought he was still going to play. Like, I knew he wasn't going to be 100%, but I thought he was still going to play and, that he would be okay. So it's a tough call, but I think I probably still have to stick with the Warriors. Steph Curry, he, like you said, he had a terrible start to the last game. And even then, his stats really weren't that impressive. I can't remember, he didn't have a great game 1 either, did he?
He had a pretty good game 1.
Yeah,
he had
it was
34 points. Obviously, they lost, but he was like their, Klay gave him 25, but
that's
Steph
right. I'm thinking of Kawhi.
Okay.
Yeah, no, but I think he'll have a good game. I mean, it is going to be tough if Clay's not in there because obviously now they can focus a lot more on Steph Curry, especially behind the arc.
Mhm.
Because Draymond can sometimes hit a three. Iguodala
They leave
obviously.
him wide open. Like
Yeah, I know they were doing
they
that
have no
yesterday,
yeah,
or
they
they were
have
doing that
no
last game.
they have no problem with letting him shoot, but
Right.
he has
So
he's
yeah,
developed kind of a restraint, I think, because earlier, in his career, he would take those a lot, but he's kind of, over time, I think, realized, hey, maybe it's not such a good idea. Maybe I should pass it to Steph let Steph or Clay shoot.
well, he was kind of like what was his name? The guy on Duke this year. I can't remember.
Barrett.
No, not Barrett. The who was the other guy? Trey Jones on
Oh
Duke.
yeah,
How like
yeah.
he was supposed to be this big 3-point threat, and every time uh, I saw a game with Duke, they would just leave him. Like anytime he got
Yeah,
the ball behind the arc, they would just play way off him because they were just like
they're
daring
scared.
him to shoot
Yeah.
it. Um, but yeah, so and like I say, Iguodala is obviously a threat behind the line. Not as big as like Clay or Steph, but he can still hit them for sure. Um,
Mhm.
but I think Steph will have a good game. I think he'll rise to the occasion, especially coming off a subpar previous game.
Mhm.
Um, the biggest question for me as to whether I was going to pick Golden State or Toronto is I don't know if Draymond can put up the same kind of results that he did in last game. Because I think, if he can play like that, then I think it's going to be extremely difficult for Toronto to beat Golden State. Because obviously, the way he was defending Siakam, and you mentioned in the previous podcast about how Toronto really doesn't have a reliable second option,
Mhm.
and obviously, with the way that Lowry's been playing, if Draymond's playing good defense on Siakam and Siakam can't get going, that really doesn't leave anybody to help Kawhi anymore. I mean, Danny Green's a decent player, but I don't know if he can really be that second guy. And also Van Vliet, who had a really good game,
Mhm.
he's a sixth man. He's not in the starting lineup. So can he be that second guy with Kawhi if Siakam and Lowry can't get going? Um, but I still think that Golden State's going to take game three. It's really hard for me to pick against the Warriors when they're on their home court. I mean, I know,
Mhm.
like you said, they've been off this year on their home court, and it was a really big shock. Especially, I remember at the start of the season, there was something like 500 on their home court,
Yeah.
and nobody expected that. It was really crazy. But I think Golden State will take. I don't. I think it'll be another close game. Um,
Mhm.
the key is obviously going to be Toronto needs to not let Golden State go off on the big third quarter run. And
Yep.
I agree with Eric. I don't think that Toronto is going to shoot nearly as bad in this next game as they did in game two because it was just ridiculous the shots that they were missing, especially there at the end of the game when you need those shots.
Mhm.
And you know, and if they can keep up the same amount of defense, then they certainly have a chance. And I think Eric was also right about this game is going to be the pivotal game. Everybody was talking about last game. If Toronto could win game two, then they probably had a good chance to win the series, and it was going to be telling. Like
Mhm.
if Toronto won game two, then it was going to be is the
The
series
pressure
like
mounts
right,
series.
and is the series like is more likely to go to 6 or 7 games. Um, Whereas if Golden State won game two, then it was just going to be a huge momentum crusher. And who's to say that Golden State can't just go on a run here and win the next 3 games? But yeah, this is really is you hardly ever hear it when a series is tied at one. But this really is a win for Toronto
Mhm.
because if they don't win, then it's likely that Golden State goes on to win Game Four, and then they're going to have to. It's going to be a real uphill battle after that because then they're going to have to win the last 3 in a row, which means they're going to have to win 2 games in Oakland if they want to take the series.
Yeah,
So
it'll have to be like LeBron did on Golden State in I think
Right.
2015
Yeah,
when the
which
Cavs won those 3 games.
right. So, yeah, it's going to be pivotal, but I'm going to take the Warriors in this one. Not by much, but I'm going
Yeah,
to take the
I'm
Warriors.
not going to take them by much either, and it's going to be a good game, and that's why I was so excited for these finals because it's something other than the Cavs Warriors, and also because the last 2 years, we got a good idea that the Warriors, have the Cavs number and stuff. So having a different challenger, I think, is making this a lot more entertaining.
Well, it's just
They're
refreshing.
yeah,
I
Sure.
mean, I know. Yeah, I know. I mean, I remember. I have a friend who, since I'm mostly a hockey fan when it comes to this time of year, but I had a friend that over the past couple of years we'd be talking because he's not a big fan of the NBA. But we'd be talking about hockey, and it'd be like, "Oh, what's going on in the NBA? Oh, it's just Cavs Warriors again." You
yeah,
know,
Same old, same old.
yeah, right. It's
crazy.
kind of
Yeah.
like how the college football playoff is around these days too. It's just like who's made the college football playoff? Up, it's Ohio State, Alabama, Clemson, really
Yeah.
Alabama, Clemson. You
Yeah.
know, so
Oklahoma
yeah,
loses in their first game.
yeah, no, but it is refreshing to see a different opponent, and it's a new, like you said, it's a new challenge, and I think the difference here really is I think Toronto has a lot more weapons than Cleveland did because obviously, Braun last series, the first time when they won, obviously they had Kyrie, so Cleveland
Mhm.
actually had some players to complement LeBron. But we saw it, in the third series and especially last year in the finals. LeBron was just a one man show. He didn't have anybody helping him out. So
And also with those 2 series, Durant outplayed LeBron. And if
right,
Durant's going to outplay LeBron,
then the
you've got
Cavaliers are
Steph against who?
right.
So yeah, the Cavs didn't have enough firepower to match.
Yeah, right. And so I think this is probably, the Raptors are going to give the first real test to the Warriors, since that, I think was it the second time that, yeah, since the second series against the Cavaliers. This is the first, I think they're going to be tested. I still think that, since I wasn't here before, make my series prediction, but,
Yeah.
I had the Warriors winning in six at the start.
Hmm.
And after seeing game one and even after seeing game two, just seeing how the Raptors could stay in it even when they were playing so badly on the offensive zone.
Hmm.
Um, I think this series will go 7 games. I mean, I still got the Warriors, but I
Yep.
think it'll go the 7 games.
Okay, so you originally thought it was going to be 6, and now you're
Yeah,
saying 7.
yeah. I
Okay.
originally had
See,
Warriors in 6, but now I got Warriors in 7.
I'm gonna
If if if,
say.
if Toronto had won last night, I might have changed it to Toronto, but
Mhm. See, for me, I'm thinking like if it's gonna go 6, I think Golden State's gonna win because Game 6 will be in Oakland. But I
right.
think if it goes Game 7, that'll mean most likely that'll mean that Toronto's won Game 6 in Oakland, and then they'll have Game 7 on their home court. And if it goes to that situation, I would give the edge to Toronto. But
Hmm.
I'm still gonna stick with my original Golden State in 6. I feel like Golden State will win these. They'll take care of business and win at home. I'll give Toronto another win in Game 5 on their home court, but obviously I want this to go 7. That'd be awesome. But
Yeah.
we'll move into our
Well,
DraftKings
but before
discussion.
you do that, I'm
Yeah.
interested to see. I know Eric, you were talking about last podcast that you had changed your. You had thought that Toronto was going to win the series after game one. What are you thinking now?
Correct. Well, for right now, with all the injuries that the Warriors have, I'm still sticking with the Raptors in 7. Now, but I will say if Golden State went, like, if Klay Thompson isn't really available to play, or he doesn't play or plays limited minutes, and then Golden State still wins this game 3, then I'll be off the bandwagon of feeling like I think Toronto is going to win.
Okay.
But but I think I just still think with all of the injuries and question marks that Golden State has, I still feel like Toronto has a chance.
Okay.
But one thing I was thinking about mentioning earlier, I didn't know if I would or not, but I think I will. It was crazy because before the series started, I didn't think there would be like any scenario where Toronto would be the team that was feeling the pressure. Because, Golden State's trying to three-peat, and, Toronto's never been there before, so they had nothing to lose, really. So I thought for sure that the pressure was going to be on the Warriors to win the whole time. But after all these injuries that Golden State, they already had Durant out, but then after the injuries that have happened in games 1 and 2, and then with Toronto not being able to win that second game on their home court, I feel like the pressure has shifted to Toronto.
I agree.
Especially after how badly they shot and everything in game 2. They're under pressure right now. And so it's going to be interesting to see if they're able to step up and overcome the pressure and steal a game on the road, or if they're going to fall apart and Golden State's going to run away with it. I kind of feel like if Golden State wins this game, that they win the series in 5 games if they win this game. Wow. So but whereas if I think if Toronto can steal this game 3, I think Toronto regains the momentum and shifts the pressure back to Golden State. So I think that's why I said earlier, I think this is a make or break game. I think whoever wins this game ultimately wins the series. Yeah. So that's my final thoughts on the predictions there.
Right. Yeah. And like you said about the pressure, how the pressure was on Golden State to three-peat and perform, but now it's like looking at Toronto and how good of a team they are. It's like, okay, well, you should be able to beat them now. They've got all these injuries without Durant. Clay's hurt. Looney's injured.
So why can't not 100%?
Right, Iguodala's not 100%. So why can't you beat them? Like, if you're supposed to be this really good team, and you got Kawhi Leonard, why can't you win?
Yeah.
So
definitely, I definitely agree with that.
Yeah. All right. So looking over at our DraftKings, how the lineouts went for Game 2, Connor wasn't in the last episode, but he did go ahead and make a lineup in our same group, and he got first place with 232 points. Yep, got that first place. And then I finished in third, about 11 points behind, or 11 or 10 points behind Connor. And then Eric finished in 7th place, about 30 or so points, 30 to 40. So he was solidly behind me, and then obviously Connor. But Connor, since you won, I'll let you go ahead and say, how well your players did, and what your lineup. Because you didn't say your lineup, so you can share your lineup and how.
Yeah, no, I mean, I was pretty pleasantly surprised on how well they did, because I took Eric's approach, and I took Siakam as my captain going into the game, which turned out to be not the greatest decision in the world. As you see, he only got 44.25 points, which I know that's what really hurt Eric this time around. But yeah, no, I wanted to pick Siakam as my captain, again taking Eric's route, so that way I could decide whether I wanted to take Curry or Kawhi and have them on my team as well. And I made the right decision and took Kawhi. You see, he got 60 points. It was really interesting in our group this time. As you can see, we had 10 people in our group, and only me, Zach, and the guy who got second actually took Kawhi. Nobody else took Kawhi. Which I thought was really interesting. And also what was really interesting was I was the only person who didn't take Steph Curry on my team, because I saw when we were on Zach's page that Steph Curry had a 90% draft rate.
Yeah, he did. And most people had him as captains too.
Right. I was the only one who didn't take Steph Curry, which turned out to be good because he had an off night. But yeah, I had Kawhi with those 60 points. Klay Thompson obviously had a big beginning to the game. He was Golden State's leading scorer, so that helped. Van Vliet, um, not much I can say about him, but he played a great game for someone coming off the bench.
Mm-hmm.
He made a couple of clutch threes there towards the end of the game. Iguodala, I think I mentioned earlier that I think his 3-pointer there at the end of the game is what probably put me over the top
Yep.
in the group. Otherwise, I probably would have gotten second. And then Ibaka, I wasn't. He was probably the one I was really unsure about taking Ibaka, but because I know he played decently with the Thunder in the past, when they'd been in the playoffs and everything. But he's obviously getting older, so I wasn't sure, but I was also surprised with him. I mean, 10 rebounds and almost had a double double, which is pretty surprising. I would think would be quite rare for Serge Ibaka. So. Yeah, I was happy with my team. I was, like I said, I was pretty shocked, especially when I saw Siakam wasn't having a good night. I did not expect to go on DraftKings and find my team in first.
Yeah, and the Ibaka thing, he actually outplayed Gasol.
Yeah,
and was much cheaper.
That was one of my choices. I was wondering if I wanted to take Gasol or if I wanted to, go a little bit cheaper and take Ibaka so I could put, like Van Vliet on my team. So,
and the crazy thing is, looking at the minutes now, Ibaka only played 16 minutes, and Gasol played 31 minutes in that game too, and he actually had a better. Obviously, his stats were better, but his fantasy stats were better too, slightly better for playing about like half the amount of minutes that Gasol did.
Mm-hmm.
So Connor's lineup was, and I noticed this earlier, like he had 3 players that I also had and 3 players from Eric's team. And the 3 players that I shared with him were good. That's why I got third place, because I had those 3 players.
They were good.
Yeah, because my other 3 players, I had Curry as my captain, but pretty much everybody had Curry as the captain, so I figured that wasn't going to be, if he does extremely well or extremely bad, that's not going to really impact me, because most everybody else has him in that same
probably
position.
would have saved me that there wasn't more people that took like Draymond or Kawhi as captain.
Yeah, and also if Curry had like a huge game where in the captain role he had like 80 or something, that also could have hurt. You still would have probably won, but it would have been interesting to see. Eric might have, won, but so we won't look too much more into how that went, but just to let you guys know the standings and everything, and that Connor did get first. I got third, and Eric got second.
I just wanted to share a quick thing, if you could put my team up.
Sure.
Obviously, with I had Siakam at captain like Connor did, but obviously that wasn't the main thing that hurt me, because obviously Connor won with Siakam as his captain, and I finished in 7th with Siakam as my captain. Mm-hmm. So the 2 moves that hurt me the most, aside from that, were 1, not picking Kawhi over Steph.
Mm-hmm.
Because Steph Curry got like 40, whereas Kawhi had 20. So as you can see, even though I finished way behind Connor and Zach, I only finished slightly more than, looks like it was slightly more than 10 points out of placing in the top 5, which would have given me money. Mm-hmm. So that was a 20-point swing that would have put me at, instead of at 108, I would have been at, let's see, I guess subtract that would have put me at 208. So I would have been in fifth place. I would have been in 5th place.
Yeah.
So the other thing that really hurt me was, and Zach, I don't remember if I mentioned this to you or not, but I want to say I did before the game. So Danny Green was my biggest pain on the whole team, because he cost me like 5,000 and only got me 15 points.
Yeah.
And DeMarcus Cousins that game, because of how few minutes he played in the first game, his salary plummeted all the way to $5,400.
Yeah, he was super cheap.
Nobody started him.
Nobody played him, and I had 500 salary difference that I did not spend, and I had thought about trading out Danny Green for DeMarcus Cousins, and DeMarcus Cousins got like 35 points, I think, or something like that. So again, that would have been another 20-point swing,
and that would have financially been acceptable.
It would have been doable.
I mean, you would have been second actually if you had made the Kawhi difference and the Cousins difference. You would have been second. You would have had 228.
It sucks because I had told Zach going into it that I didn't feel like super confident with my lineup. I didn't hate my lineup, but I just had trouble finding a combination of players that I felt was right. And then, then looking back on it, my gut feeling there was definitely correct, but I just didn't have enough confidence to start DeMarcus Cousins with him not playing much in the first game. But I did feel like he was going to play more. I felt like they needed another big guy in there. But so those two decisions were ultimately what cost me, finishing, out of the money instead of finishing in the money. So definitely disappointing for sure. So I'll be hoping for a rebound here in our game 3.
Rebound.
A rebound. A basketball term.
So I think now that since Eric got first place in game 1, Connor got first place in game 2, I think it's going to be only natural and only right if I get first place in game 3.
Hey, you finished in the money both times, so I
have finished.
You can't get too greedy here.
Hopefully I
calm down, sir.
But so I'll go ahead and share my lineup that will finish in first place. Everybody, I've got Curry as my captain.
Interesting, bold statement there, Cotton.
Yeah,
very bold.
It is bold, but this is crazy. When I didn't expect it to be like this, but I actually spent all of my money in this lineup. And normally you're left with a couple hundred, but I've got, I guess if a computer was running this, they might come up with this lineup because it gives all the money. But I've got Curry as my captain. Like I said before in the prediction, I think he'll go out for 40 with Clay not being there or Clay not being Clay. That's going to give more opportunities for Steph. And like Eric said in the first game, shooting percentages don't matter in this. Steph could go like from the 3-point line like 7 of 21 or 7 of like 30. Not great, but that's 7 threes, and they give you extra points for threes. So he's got really good potential being on his home court, wanting to show up, be that, hero. Going for that first finals MVP, I think he'll have a big game. And then I've got Draymond Green for the first time in my lineup. I think like I said earlier, I think he's a guaranteed double-double. I don't think he'll have as good of a game as he did before, but, they are playing at home, and he did, find a way to score. He got 17 points in that game. So his salary is the second most expensive on my team. And then I've got Siakam, and this is a case of like, when you're in the stock market, buying low, selling high, they say. Siakam, after that first game, his price soared up because he had those huge stats. Then game 2, everybody like Eric and Connor who started him, he didn't live up to that expectation. But now that he had that, kind of bad game, his price dropped to 9,400. So I'm hoping that he, I don't expect him at all in this series to have a game like game 1, but if he does better than what he did in that last game, I think he should be fine and a fine addition for my lineup. Van Vliet, I still don't understand why DraftKings doesn't raise his value up even more than that. He's only at 6,200. I know he's not a starter, but looking at the minutes, the guy played 38 minutes, which was
like the third most on the Raptors,
wasn't it? Third most on their team, yep. And I know they ride the hot hand, but still, with Lowry, who I expect to get into foul trouble again.
Probably to tank again.
Yeah, I mean, like Lowry, if he gets in foul trouble again, and obviously if Lowry has a huge game, I'm gonna, have to come on this show next time and really apologize for that. But But
maybe he needs to listen to this and get himself fired up. You know?
There's this guy named Zach who's ripping on me.
Yeah, so I'm not a Kyle Lowry fan, and I am a Van Vliet fan though. So I think their coach is going to give him more minutes. I think for the value that he is, it's a no-brainer pick. I think both you guys have him as well, so he's probably going to be, he's not going to be 30% started like he did in that last game. So he's kind of the pick I think most people will have. And then I've got two, cheaper players that I needed to round out my team, Danny Green and Sean Livingston. And Danny Green was only 3,600, and he's still a starter on their team. I know he only had 26 minutes, but for a starter to be that cheap, I thought was, crazy. And he had a bad game too, but the thing with Danny Green is he's hot or cold. He'll have a game like last game where he'll be so cold, then he'll have a game where he's, got potentially 25 points, and that would be a huge outperformance in his salary. So he's there kind of as like a boomer bust type of, in fantasy football talk, boomer bust type of player. And then Sean Livingston is the cheapest guy on my team, 2,800. If Clay doesn't play, those minutes he's going to get more minutes. And I thought he was, kind of cheap. He's not a big scorer or anything, but he'll grab some rebounds. Playing at home, those role players on the Warriors tend to play better. So I've got him mainly just because of how cheap he is, and I didn't have that much money left though. So I'm not expecting great things from Livingston, but I still do feel like this, this is going to be my first one without Kawhi and Steph though. So that'll be interesting to see how that goes.
Yeah.
So I'll let Connor go through his lineup now.
Yeah, so my lineup this time, I was actually pretty surprised when I found out that you didn't have any money left on your lineup, because I have, 200. I still have both Steph and Kawhi on my team. Decided to go with Steph as the captain this time. I think he's going to have a bounce back game, especially being in front of the home crowd. I think he's going to have a big game. I wanted to take Kawhi again because, he really has to be the guy that's going to carry this team at this point. We thought after game one that maybe Siakam could help him out. But obviously, if Draymond keeps up the defense and Siakam keeps missing, that's not going to happen. And, we've all seen how Kyle Lowry's played to this point. So not much. Not much confidence in many of the Raptors players. And as I say that, I have 3 Raptors players on my team. But yeah, so Steph and Kawhi. Then I decided I was going to go with DeMarcus Cousins. I was surprised he wasn't more expensive, actually, because I didn't have him originally when I first made it. But as I was going back through, I saw that I was like, oh, he's actually kind of cheap. I could, put him in my lineup. And if he has anything close to resembling the game he played last game, if he can actually, have a good first quarter, because outside the first quarter, his game was great the other night.
Mm-hmm.
So if he can put a complete game together, I think DeMarcus Cousins could be a big asset. Van Vliet, like you said, I was really impressed with him, and I think you're right. I think a lot of people are gonna take him this time because I think Toronto's going to keep giving him the minutes. As long as Lowry keeps playing the way he's been playing, and as long as if Danny Green's having an off night, then Van Vliet's going to get the minutes, and I think he can make the most of his opportunities. For Ibaka again. I was pleasantly surprised with how he did. Also, mainly because I think Marc Gasol was a bit too expensive.
Mm-hmm.
So I decided I'd go with Ibaka again. That might be a bit of a mistake. I don't know how likely he is to have 2 good games in a row, but
I don't think it is a mistake just because his price actually dropped despite him having a good game. So to me, he's even got a little more, value than he did in the last game. Like
Yeah.
I picked him in my lineup too. Like I don't think it's a mistake at all. I think it's a solid move on your part.
Yeah. Well, and also, I think also Zach and I. Well, I don't know if we talked about this, but he might to get more minutes.
I
Especially
think
with the way
so, yeah.
he played, and I think we were talking about that with Andrew Bogut too. We were debating, but before if maybe we might want to take Andrew Bogut because he didn't play at all in the first game, but he did play. How many minutes he played last game? But he didn't play a whole lot of minutes. But in the few minutes that he played, he actually had a decent game. And
Yeah.
so, because we were talking about, with the injury to Looney on the Warriors, what kind of big men they would have. Since he's out, yeah, he played 7 minutes, but you
Yep.
saw in that time he was 3 for 3 on his field goals in that time. Um, so I think that's kind of how I was feeling with Ibaka with the same thing. I think he might get more minutes, especially with how underperforming Marc Gasol was in the last game. And then I round out my lineup with Quinn Cook. He was kind of how Zach took Livingston because of Clay being out. I decided I wanted to take Quinn Cook because of Clay being out. Because Quinn Cook gives Golden State another 3-point threat behind the line. I think he had 9 points in game 2, and they were all 3-pointers. So Golden State's another threat behind the arc besides Steph Curry in the next game. So, and also, I think Quinn Cook is. I think he'll do well for me.
All right.
I'm hoping to defend my title.
Yeah, you gotta defend that championship. Okay, so with my lineup, I did have Van Vliet earlier when I had Klay Thompson in my lineup, but then when I had to get Klay out, I had to make some adjustments. So I actually don't have him. But the reason why I don't have him is because I went with more of a star-studded lineup as Zach has been using in the first 2 games.
Yeah.
I wanted to get both Steph and Kawhi on my team, and I really wanted Draymond too. So I didn't necessarily want Draymond to be my captain, but that was the only way I could afford him and Steph and Kawhi at the same time.
All that money.
Yeah, I got all about that money. So I kind of went with a similar approach that I did in the last one, also just in terms of the fact that I picked a slightly cheaper player to be my captain so that I could spend more money on all of my utility players. So, and I don't see Draymond stopping his production, even if he doesn't score like as many points. He's still he passes the ball a lot. He's going to get his assists. He's going to get his rebounds.
He's going to play the whole game pretty much.
Yeah, he's going to be out.
He's going to be the one guy they're not going to take off the court pretty much.
He's going to be out there for at least 40 minutes. So I'm trusting him to get his numbers. And obviously, I agree with you guys too that I do expect Steph to have a better game because I don't know what was going on with him in the first quarter of that last game, but he seemed like sick or something, and they were giving him energy gels or whatever, and whatever that those
injecting him with Gatorade,
Yeah, he said he wanted an IV. He had to get an IV after the game.
Yeah, that was crazy. So I don't know, man, but I expect him to be better in this game. And Kawhi, same thing. I mean, these guys are these high salaries for a reason, so they're going to get their points. And then with my 3 more of like role players, I have all Raptors players in mind. Danny Green, he pissed me off in the last game with his 15 points, but his salary then because of that plummeted pretty dramatically there. So similar to what Zach said with the stock market comparison, with him having a low salary right now, I'm buying in. And my other 2, Ibaka and Powell. Ibaka, I went with just like Connor did. His salary actually dropped a couple $100, and he had a pretty good game despite the limited minutes. And I do agree that I think he could see some more minutes. And then with Powell at 2,400, he was one that I remember in the first game that Zach and I did together. He was a big reason why Zach and I finished in the top 5, but it was because we didn't have him. I think like 5 or 6 people picked him, and he only played like 5 minutes and got like 4 fantasy points or something. It was really, I don't know if you remember exactly what it was, Zach, but it was
he
really bad.
He didn't have a good game. When I was watching the game, I didn't see him at all doing anything. So
yeah, he was only in there for 5 minutes. So at that point, I was like, oh, there's no way I'm going to pick him ever in this series. But then in game 2, he played for about 21 minutes, and he was decent from the field, and got a couple assists and a steal. I had these other little stats in there. So I'm thinking, and his salary, I think, dropped too, actually, which was surprising to me.
Probably just based off of the first game.
It's pretty cheap, yeah.
Yeah, I want to say in the first game he was like 3,800 or something, and that was the one where like everybody picked him. And then I think in game 2 he was 2,800, and then this game he was only 2,400. So I figured with him having a fairly good game, and it wasn't an amazing game, but you're not looking for an amazing game from your cheaper players. You just want to get something out of nothing, and that's what I'm going for with him. So I do feel more confident with my lineup than I did with the last one. The last one I wasn't too sure, and I ended up finishing 7th. So I'm hoping, since I feel more confident this time, that I'm going to place in the money and get my $3 back. So.
Hopefully we all placed in top 3. That would be awesome. But
yeah, that would give us some good sports talk cred if we finish in the top 3 out of this. So
just 1, 2, 3.
1, 2, 3. Let's go.
It's gonna be a fight for number 1, though.
Yeah, I am going to take Connor's championship and all that, but but yeah. So that's the end of my lineup.
Awesome. So we'll hope to be back with this same lineup of guests. Hopefully Eric and Connor and I all can find a time to work out for Game 4's talk. But this has been really fun. Connor's first invite to the podcast. So thank you to everybody that listened to this and watched this on YouTube. Hopefully you guys are a little bit more educated on these finals. I know we talk a lot about it these first, couple episodes and everything, and we're not always going to be talking about NBA, but this is the most important time in the NBA right now. So after these finals,
could mention the Stanley Cup.
yeah, the Stanley Cup too. But obviously, the hockey department is not something that Eric and I know very well.
Yeah.
I'd be like, my analysis of hockey would be like, yeah, so the teams are playing and goals were scored. Okay.
Hits were made.
Yeah. Somebody won the game. Okay. That's all I know.
Someone took a stick to the face,
Yeah. The usual.
But after these finals are over, there's the draft and free agency to talk about, but also we'll get into some NFL talk, college football talk, as well. So, this isn't just an NBA channel.
Despite the logo.
Despite the logo for now, we're going to be updating that soon. But thank you guys, like I said again, everybody who listened, and we'll be back for Game 4, probably in this similar style of format. If anybody wants to, post any questions on Facebook to us at Clutch Crew Sports, and we'll definitely answer them. I don't expect there to be many, but if there are, we'll answer them, and you'll hear all of our answers to that. So it's been fun, and make sure you guys listen, or not listen. Obviously, you're already listening, but share it to your friends. Just get the word out for us, and it's much appreciated. All right, so with that, we're gonna end the show today, and see you guys next time.
See you guys.
Peace.